Moving on to item number 8, presentation on a final draft for the Route 118, Route 6 corridor study. Mr. Hanson, you have the floor.
Thank you again for having us this evening. You may recall back in March, at least Mr. Kitchen, Mr. Medeiros, we were before you, Serpid's representative here, Lizeth Gonzalez, and myself talking about the corridor study that the town commissioned in anticipation of sewers coming into town and the types of developments that not only could be realized, but also what we would want to see. At that time, we focused on the existing conditions and the various sites along the two corridors, and Serpid has taken it a step further throughout the spring and into this summer to do some renderings to provide a glimpse of what it could be. These aren't engineered by any stretch, but it also provides this corridor study some recommendations, which Lizeth will go forward with discussing. So, Lizeth, it's all yours.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that introduction. So I want to take a step back because it has been a while since we've all been together, so I want to give us all a little bit of a refresher as to what the foundations of the report are, why we're talking about this, and I do want to recognize that Swansea is coming at this from a really advantageous position. You guys have been working towards this for many, many years, and I think we're starting to make some headway. You know, the IMA in 2018, the recent vote at town meeting, I think there's a lot of movement. So this is a timely opportunity to really start talking about and planning for what could happen when sewer comes. So this was our study area, just a reminder. It covers the borders along like Route 118, Route 6, and it was really the basis for this study. And we also considered zoning when it came to developing scenarios, visions, identifying key sites. A majority of the corridor is residential. However, a significant portion is commercial and just over 4% is industrial. So this gives us something to work with. There's a foundation here. We also looked at Swansea's industries. Over the last decade, we saw that Swansea's top 5 industries include retail, trade, healthcare and social assistance, accommodation and food service, educational services, and construction. So this is within the last 10 years. This is what has already been occurring. What we're trying to see is how competitive Swansea is compared to other areas in our region and how we can leverage that. So based on that, we noticed that healthcare and social assistance and construction continue to grow at pace with our local geographies, our greater region. However, we saw that other industries were growing and outpacing our region. So this tells us there are rising industries that we can also shift focus to and give an opportunity for additional growth. And that includes transportation and warehousing, finance and insurance, professional and technical services. We also use location quotient. This is a kind of like analysis number that lets us know how concentrated a certain industry is in Swansea compared to the state and compared to the MSA. That includes Rhode Island and Bristol County. And we noticed that Swansea is actually competitive in 2 of its top 5 industries, including construction and healthcare and social assistances, and 2 of the rising industries, including transportation and warehousing, finance, and insurance. So you'll see this play out in some of the scenarios that we chose for growth to kind of model what potential growth might look like in town. We also commissioned a study through FXM Associates to look at space demand in the future. So this is a 5-year snapshot into the future as to what space demand looks like in Swansea. What are developers looking for? Swansea should lean into office space. There are low vacancy rates, occupancy is high, despite what many may think with the results of the pandemic. Swansea can also capture additional retail and commercial activity. We don't want to forget that the Route 6 118 corridor is a retail and commercial corridor, and it's the backbone of it. And I think based on the results of this study through FXM, that is still going to be the case. And we can continue to support that. And lastly, one of the major takeaways from this analysis was that Swansea should encourage flex space. So that is a specific type of industrial development that combines at least two uses. So think office and warehousing, or office and lab space. So it gives companies looking for biotechnology spaces, or who want to manufacture and also ship their own product out. So it lets them do that. We talked a little bit about the key sites last time we were together. Some things have changed based on conversations with John and just kind of looking at redevelopment potential. This site here between what is now B and C, we eliminated. That's where the former landfill is. And we recognize in the document itself that there are kind of green initiatives that you can do on that site, such as solar. But when it comes to projecting significant growth and high tax revenue and job opportunities, it ends up falling on the lower end. So we ended up with these 4 key sites. And I'm going to go through each one of them and show you kind of what exactly we were envisioning there. To help us envision what could grow on these sites, we use precedent development. So these are developments in and around the region. You'll find mostly in Mass, 1 or 2 in Rhode Island, that fit the industries that I was talking about earlier. So retail and services, light industrial and industrial development, small scale industrial to give a little bit of variety, and mixed use. And I'll get into why we included that in there as well. So you can see here, we took each of the developments and categorized them by low and high intensity, provided their metrics, and broke it down so that way you can see what the building value is per square foot, what their job estimates are, and what their jobs per square foot are. This lets us project what a development similar to, say, a Clock Tower Square in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, would look like in Swansea, and how that would translate in building value, in tax revenue, in potential jobs. And so those are some of the images of the precedent developments that we chose. And here are some of our renderings. So for Site A, which we focused on the area across from the Swansea Mall, this one is largely business. There are some split zone parcels, so it makes it somewhat residential in certain areas, but it focuses on some activities like retail. There's some storage. However, we noticed that large sections either were underutilized or just looked empty. So there was opportunity for growth there. Based on that, we saw that keeping some successful existing commercial, we could take advantage of the street front and continue that commercial growth, focusing mostly on small stores, and in the back fill in with additional commercial with apartments on the top floor. So this gives us that mixed use. And the reason we did this was because there's already interest on the town's behalf in having mixed use development across the road at Swansea Mall. And this would require some changes, and I'll get into those recommendations after. But for example, this one would require extending the overlay district. Site B, this is where Route 6 and 118 kind of cross. This right here is your new Starbucks going in. John mentioned that while we were developing these, you guys were getting a new Starbucks. So we wanted to envision what, potential growth would look like with what's already being planned. So right now, this is categorized and zoned as Business B and manufacturing. So this takes advantage of the potential warehousing growth in the region, as well as space for a biotechnology lab. And these renderings, I want to mention, are based on, obviously they're very square, they're based on a footprint to be able to say, okay, given constraints of wetlands, given constraints of roadways and rights of way, this is the max that we could fit. So you don't have to build something this size, but if you would like to go full potential, you could fit something of that size on that parcel. Site C, this is one of my favorites. This area is along the Coal River. It is zoned for manufacturing. However, it is largely underutilized. There's not much there. There's no infrastructure except for an unpaved road. And so this one here proposes an artisan district. This is a type of zoning and activity that is kind of craft manufacturing. Think your breweries, your coffee roasters, so very geared toward public activity. And this makes the perfect place for, like we say, kind of local business marketplace, a brewery and event space. And one of the other details of this specific site that we wanted to emphasize were connections to the natural resources and the open space. So you'll notice here we propose a riverfront park as well as a boat launch. I apologize, that's a little hard to read right now, as well as a multi-use path that would connect all across the riverfront. So this district really kind of enhances the connection and the relationship to those natural resources, which aren't currently there. And then with the remaining space at the edge of that key site, we proposed warehousing, again, catching on to that idea of that industry growing, and then commercial condos in the style of, say, Clock Tower Square, which based on the analysis we conducted and the space demand model, there's still space and there will be a market for that in the future. And then the last one, this is Site D. This is Route 6 and Gardner's Neck Road, currently Business B and some residential. This kind of continues that trend. I know, John, when we were talking about this, you mentioned that the agricultural use that's already there, there's really no one to take that on in the future. So its kind of future is a little uncertain. So we're envisioning kind of shopping village style. Think Mashpee Commons, your Peyton Aram Village, even Garden City we heard at one point. And this one also combines a portion of residential for, say, townhomes, something that could have a relationship with, again, the river and some natural space. And then this leads me into some of the recommendations. So it's really nice to be able to put a picture up and say, this is what it could be, but how do you get there? I will be the first one to say that it is not easy, nor is it a quick path. However, the town can really start taking some small steps in advancing and creating a solid foundation to make and enable this vision to come to life. So one of the recommendations we proposed is expanding manufacturing zoning along a specific parcel. There's kind of like a gap in between that makes it difficult to achieve certain, either you can do parcel assembly and you would want them to be zoned all the same and allow specific uses. So this would allow site B as our key site to be more easily implemented. We talk about flex space and integrating it as a defined use under manufacturing zoning. And the reason we do this is because all the uses are allowed. Office, lab, warehousing, individually. And I think one of the things that we've seen is that towns that have a flex space defined use tend to get those types of developments. It signals to developers that you're open to this, it's going to facilitate their path towards development and when it comes to site plan review. So we want to make sure we're making that easy for any private developer that wants to come and that we're signaling to them that, yes, we're open to this type of development. Touching on Site C, where we're creating those connections to natural resources and specifically the Coal River, we talk about integrating open space and public water access components through either zoning or negotiating specific, concessions during the site plan review process. So we recommend it as an action item, but leave it at the discretion of the town as to how they would want to do that, whether through zoning or, a review process with the planning board. And then, as I mentioned earlier, some of the sites that talk about mixed-use development, one of the ways that the town could do that is by expanding or incorporating a sub-district to the Swansea Mall Overlay District. Currently, it's just on the Swansea Mall site, so we could expand it to across the road, or what is Site D in the vision scenarios. And then, of course, we want to make sure that the town is able and has the support necessary to continue pursuing funds for sewer construction. Sometimes just being able to say, we thought about this, we went through the process, we know this is what we need in order to achieve this greater vision. You know, having just a goal and a plan to be able to say, part of our goal is to continue getting funds for sewer construction. And we wanted to make sure we made a point of including that. I think a lot of these developments, these proposed growth scenarios wouldn't be possible without, you know, sewer and water infrastructure. So we need to be sure that we're continuing to plan for that. The full plan is available on the website, and that includes the renderings, some of the kind of tax revenue and job descriptions, and job estimates, I should say, along with the full FXM report that they conducted for the space demand.
Could I ask two quick questions?
Yeah, definitely.
I apologize for not knowing, but what is FXM?
They are a market analysis firm. They're a third-party consultant. We work with them every now and then to get more specific detail. They have access to certain systems and programs that we may not be able to so easily access.
Thank you. And my second question is, what is the website?
It is, I can pull it up right now. It's not right there, sorry. It is on the Serpent website. If you search Swansea Route 6 118, it should pop right up. And I can link that in the presentation as well.
I believe we have it linked on our town website as well, Mike.
You'll have to help me find that, John.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that, and so you get your due credit for all of this work and the presentation. Again, if you wouldn't mind just saying who you are, who you're with, just so
Sure.
that the good folks that watching will understand.
Sure. So for those of you who are, you know, new and who I'm meeting for the first time, I'm Lizeth Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Economic Development at SERPED, the Regional Planning Agency.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. I'll open it up for any questions from my colleagues. Mr. Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, Lizeth, thank you. It's a pleasure to read a document that I think is thoroughly comprehensive and is well thought out in terms of some of the recommendations that it makes. I had one question about Site C. If you'd call that drawing up, if you could, please. And I think I know the property, I know where we're referencing here, where Site C is.
Site
Sears
C is
Road?
this one.
Yeah. And but it runs parallel with the Coles River, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So why was the warehousing put closer to, in your proposed scenario? And I know there's no hard, fast rule, but it seemed to me that you would inverse potentially where the recreational and the warehousing activities should take place. And maybe there was a reason why you placed them the way you did.
I think it was the footprint. So it's because of probably wetlands that we couldn't go larger.
With the warehousing.
Correct. So if you see here, this is a larger footprint than this area here, and we did not touch this front portion, so all we're working with is this footprint here. And we can't go further because of the wetlands, so that's why we
That's where
chose that space. But like you said, nothing is hard and fast,
but
certain, just
I
one way.
was trying to get a sense of what your thought process was with that. And in looking at the plan, the recommendations, you were very specific, or SERPED was very specific, in recommending where the action items should be located, whether it was planning, whether it was with our sewer commission, accommodation of the sewer commission, the town administrator's office, wherever it may be. And I know that everybody in government, me included, we always like to do the low-hanging fruit because it shows progress and it's more easily done. But there were some high priority items that seemed to me to be probably more of a heavy lift in terms of the recommendations. And they're not prioritized. You went number 1 through 13. Actually, I think you skipped number 3, by the way.
Oh, I will look at that.
Yeah, I tried to find number
did.
3. There is no number 3.
I did notice that just now.
But in reading the document, it seemed to me that it would be helpful to us in order to direct the resources within our community in an appropriate way, as we're the executive branch of our government, that it would be helpful for this selectman to reach a conclusion as to the priorities that you think with the highest goal that need to be pursued with more rigor and more arduously upfront
Okay.
than over the long term.
Yep.
Because while we are still years away from that corridor having its, and the sewer development obviously spurred this whole conversation, it seems to me we ought to be planning that there is no doubt in my mind that the square footage value for all of those parcels are going to go up dramatically when that sewer project is completed
Without a
along that Phase 1, I believe, corridor, Phase 1, 1A, whatever it's called. So bottom line is, it would be helpful to us, and John, without having Liz do this in isolation, if you could help her prioritize for us the ones that she thinks we ought to be driving to first.
Yeah.
We may disagree with you, but I'd like to see what your thoughts are on that subject
Okay.
before before I'm asked, all right, pursue number 8, 12, and non-existent number 3.
I avoided that one.
Oh, you avoided that one? I was afraid that I was missing something. I kept looking for a page that wasn't there.
I apologize.
No apology necessary.
Very, very valid. I think I've done this so much. I assume, anything that's in the town's control is always what you can tackle first. But I'm happy to go back,
In
and
case you haven't
indicate
noticed,
that.
we have limited resources within our governmental structure, so it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we're going to take them verbatim, but I think that my colleagues and I would have something we could really put our teeth into if you said, take item 8, number 10, and number 13, and really try to drive those home first.
No, I can definitely do that.
And would you say in the warehousing, you're talking about logistics when you talk about warehousing, right? Which has become a big, with just-in-time usage of parts and products. It seems to me that warehousing and logistics and the crafts are already here with one of their enterprises in terms of doing that. And people think of warehousing in a very negative way,
Yep.
boxy, not very attractive, that kind of thing. But logistics and warehouse and distribution now can be very complex, very high-tech centers.
yeah.
All you have to do is take a look at one of the Amazon centers that have been built either here along the Route 24 corridor or along 295 in Johnston, Rhode Island, to realize they're not only huge, but they can be, real engines, economic engines for their areas. So it's not just what you'd think of box in, box out.
Correct.
It's a much more sophisticated type of enterprise. I thank you for your work. If you could do those recommendations, that'd be helpful.
Happy to.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Mr. Bodett.
So, some of it looked really cool, some of it looked a little overpowering to me,
Yes.
but I know it's all in a stretch out of time. So I think there's a lot of due diligence on my end to learn exactly everything that's being done. So a lot of it's new to me, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I mean.
And the residents of Swansea also.
Yes. So I think one thing to think about and to put it into perspective is our job when it comes to projecting economic growth. We go for the best and highest use. That's my phrase, right? Best and highest use. So we're looking at taking advantage of the space that we have, and because manufactured zone land is so limited there, we want to use as much of it as we can and take advantage of as much of it as we can. But that's not to say that Swansea's going to build it all out. You can limit that through your zoning, you can adjust that, and it really all depends on what the market demand is going to be at the time. You may have more demand that you can even imagine when sewer comes, but you'll be limited by the constraints that we utilized here. But you can always go smaller. I understand it is overwhelming. It's a lot of growth to imagine all in one time.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bodett. Fantastic presentation. I do have to say, and I'm always a student of some of this sort of thinking. So as you were talking, my wheels are spinning here. In terms of, you had mentioned construction, the construction industry as one of our, I guess, key industries right now. What is that construction that you're targeting? Is it home building? Is it horizontal construction in terms of roadways, infrastructure?
Unfortunately, our industry data doesn't get that specific. I imagine it's a combination of it all, but I don't have a clear-cut answer for that, unfortunately.
No, that's fine.
Think about it like this, Mr. Medeiros, when you fill out your census and you're putting down what industry do you work in, probably would fall, all those examples you just gave would fall under that. Someone's not going to be able to have their specific job industry
Okay,
in there.
I
Because
get
that's
it.
where that data comes from. It's all born out of the
Okay,
the
it's not,
census.
thank you for
Yeah.
that. It's not necessarily, like, when you were talking about it, in my mind, when you said the construction industries, I'm thinking of like construction ongoing within the confines of the town.
Yep.
But no, that's like folks or a segment of the population that are involved in construction in some form or fashion.
Right. If you worked at Horner Millwork or you worked at Cornerstone, Design or any
Gravel
of
pit.
those.
Or if you worked at a gravel.
Gravel pit, right.